The NYPD is giving an update on their investigation into several killings in Brooklyn. Let's go to it now.
The diligent work of the investigators assigned to the 73 Precinct Detective Squad and Brooklyn North Homicide. These men and women are undisputedly the best of the best at what they do. And what I'm going to tell you today will only reinforce that statement. Yesterday, Mr. Kevin Gavin, G-A-V-I-N, was arrested for 3 murders that occurred between 2015 and, unfortunately, 2021 at the Woodside Houses, which is a senior housing development located at 393 Powell Street in the confines of the 73 Precinct. Mr. Gavin was familiar with many of the residents in the building and ran errands for some of the elderly tenants who resided at that location. The way we developed probable cause was through forensic evidence, credible witnesses, our partnership with the Kings County District Attorney's Office. Eric, thank you very much for all our partnerships. The first homicide victim was Miss Myrtle McKinney, M-C-K-E-N-N-Y, an 82-year-old woman, or 82-year-old resident who was found on November 9th, 2015, inside of her apartment by her home health aide. Initially, it was believed that Miss McKinney died from natural causes, but while being examined, a stab wound was discovered at the left rear of her neck, which changed the classification of this incident to a homicide. The case has remained open throughout this time with very few investigative leads. Until recently, the second homicide victim was an 83-year-old woman, identified as Miss Jacolia James, who was found on April 30th, 2019, lying face down inside her apartment by her grandson. Her grandson had last seen her earlier that night at approximately 7 p.m., and when he returned home almost 4 hours later, she was deceased. Ms. James had injuries to her face and neck, which were highly suspicious. As a result of forensic evidence that was recovered from the scene, Mr. Gavin became a suspect in this homicide. The third and most recent homicide victim was 78-year-old Miss Juanita Caballero, C-A-B-A-L-L-E-R-O, on Friday, January 15th, 2021. Her son came to spend the weekend with her and instead found her inside of her apartment, lying on the floor with a telephone cord wrapped around her neck. The assigned detectives remain in constant contact with the Kings County District Attorney's Office, and we are working closely together to go forward and bring justice to the families. Please understand, these investigations are still in its preliminary stages, and we are continuing to follow all leads on any other incident which Mr. Gavin may be involved in. I'm going to pass it over to District Attorney Eric Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank Chief Harrison for inviting me to this presser. My office worked very hard with the New York City Police Department to bring us to the point where we're at today, where we can announce the arrest of the suspect. I'm going to impanel the grand jury to have the grand jury hear all of the evidence in this case. I am confident upon hearing the evidence that the grand jury will charge and indict the defendant. But I wanted to be here because I wanted the community to know that I know how devastating these losses have been to the people of Brownsville, to the residents of those houses, that these women who are beloved mothers and grandmothers and neighbors the fear that has existed in the Woodson houses regarding what's happening there. I am very proud that we're able to make this announcement today, and I'm confident that the defendant took advantage of his relationship with these women, were allowed into their homes, and did unspeakable acts of violence against them. I believe that our community will be safer, and this happened because we were working in close work with the New York City Police Department detectives, as Chief Harrison said, the homicide detectives, and the work of my assistant district attorneys in analyzing forensics and other leads. And so with this said, I am confident that we have the right person in custody, and we'll be moving very promptly into impaneling a grand jury to hear the evidence in this case. And I want to thank you again, Chief Harrison, for the invitation, and to the community, the district attorney's office, and me personally care very much about the seniors and the vulnerable people that live in these houses, and I think that this arrest will have a profound impact on the sense of public safety in Brooklyn. Thank you.
We're going to take a few questions. First question, Tina, for?
So what did he do? Like, how did he have access to them? Was he a handyman? He ran errands? What was his general?
So, Tina, before I answer that question, if you don't mind, I want to acknowledge two phenomenal leaders that really helped close this case, Chief Mike Kemper and Lieutenant Sammy Herrera, who really did a great job of being able to close and make an arrest in this case. In regards to your question, yes, he had a relationship with our victims. He used to run errands for them. What we believe at this time is it sounds like the reason why he might have committed these acts is over an argument over money or finances. Rocco?
Chief, assuming he was being eyed by you guys for the first two, what was it or what happened between the Caballero murder and today that allowed you to connect those three and make the arrest?
Yeah, Rocco. So I kind of touched on that in my opening remarks. Some forensic evidence came back that helped strengthen our leads towards him. Once again, working hand in hand with Eric Gonzalez and his team helped us push it over the edge to get probable cause to place him under arrest.
Chief, did he make any statements when he was arrested?
He did. So he was read his Miranda warnings, which he waived, and we were able to talk to him regarding his role in some of these investigations.
Did he confess outright?
It's an ongoing investigation. I don't want to get too much into that detail.
Did he live there? Did he live in the house?
He did. He did live on the within the building. Yes, he did.
Yes, sir. Was there a series of financial transactions that alerted you to anything, withdrawals from a bank account?
No, not at all.
Rocco, you have another question?
Yeah, Chief, how old is he? And can you give us a little bit as far as background, prior arrests,
Yeah.
what he actually does for a living?
Yeah. Well, regarding his occupation, it's unknown at this time. He's 66 years old. Like I stated before, he does live in that building, and he has a couple priors or a couple incidents with law enforcement. Looks like most of them are drug related.
Did he work for NYPD?
He did not.
Before we give any more questions to Mr. Attorney, I'd like to introduce the folks on his team as well, and the detectives will take one or two more if they have some.
Thank you. Also here today with us is the chief of the Brooklyn District Attorney's Homicide Bureau, Timothy Goff, and next to him is Assistant District Attorney Matthew Madej, who's been running and investigating these most recent cases. And to the question that Rocco had, there was some additional evidence in this most recent homicide that allowed us to make the connection, because prior to that, the pattern of deaths that were happening inside those houses could not be clearly linked to an individual. But after this unfortunate last killing, we were able to find a very definitive link between the man that has been put in custody and the three cases that Chief Harrison mentioned.
Yes, ma'am.
The people in that community are also pointing to a fourth death of Hector Higgins. Is that being investigated this time as well?
So we're still looking to any other incidents that might have occurred in that building. That name did come up, but at this time we can't link any of the homicides to that incident.
Yeah, Chief, or Mr. Gonzalez, this is not necessarily a law enforcement question, but there have been complaints out there, Inez Barr and some of the residents, about the need they felt for better security. Those complaints haven't made their way to the ears of the detectives or Brooklyn District Attorney's Office or anyone other than at NYPD. What would you like that?
Yeah, so I don't have that information. I don't know if Dave Barrera, who was the chief of housing, maybe can answer that question.
NYPD put in 4 cameras approximately 1 year ago. They were slated to have 65 additional cameras put into that building, and unfortunately COVID hit and the budget was, the capital budget was taken away, so they were never installed. They're in the process right now, installing them.
With 4 at that building, Chief, or at that
There's 4
development?
there's 4 in the lobby of that building. It's a 25-story building, and there's 4 that in the lobby, and we have a police camera there also.
Did those cameras play a role in identifying the suspect in this case?
Unfortunately, they did not.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sir. Is there anything to say to the families who waited this long for this outcome? Any of the families that were wondering?
Well, you know, you've all heard me say this before. The New York City detectives are the greatest detectives in the world. We will not stop. We will not rest until we bring justice to the families that happen to lose a loved one. So it's very important that people need to realize these detectives are working very, very hard to solve every single case in New York City.
Our hearts and our prayers go out to the families, and we're committed to making sure that the allegations made against this defendant make its way through court, and that the families get a sense of justice for their loss, and that the community also gets a sense of justice, because this has impacted not only the residents but the entire community of Brownsville. And I am looking forward to having that information presented to a grand jury, and upon the grand jury reaching a conclusion on the evidence, we'll be making additional comments regarding the evidence. But I will say what Chief Harrison said, which is right now the case is ongoing and there's additional investigative steps being taken.